Hello, Blue Jays fans. Welcome to episode 289 of the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, brought to you by, of course, JaysFromTheCouch.com. Thank you so much for joining us for another week, another episode, whether you're tuning in to our live stream on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, or you're listening after the fact on Apple, Google, Stitcher, or any other podcast platform. We're everywhere, and you can find us week after week, so thank you for that. I'm your host, as always, Shaun Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle, JFtC. We've got a great episode for you this week, but before I get to that, several of you reach out every week with your comments or questions, and we do appreciate it. Aside from joining our live show, our audience can always keep the Blue Jays discussion going everywhere. You can send us a tweet at Jays from Couch or send an email to info@jaysfromthecouch.com. So send us your questions, your comments. If you're too shy to join our live stream, that's okay. Send us your questions and comments ahead of time for an upcoming episode, and we'll be happy to throw you and your comments here into the live stream. At this time, I will bring in my co-hosts with the Mo-osts. They're joining me again for another week. I don't know why they keep coming back, but they're here. Host of the On-Feck Circle, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, the feckless wonder, Steve. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Shaun. It's good to see you were just sharing on Twitter that since Rob Manfred has proven he cannot walk on water, he is walking across different practice fields at Roger Dean Stadium. So maybe there's hope for a miracle.
It's true. That's what Twitter has become. Watching men walk from one room to another. It's exciting times, folks. And to help enjoy these exciting times, host of Sunny Side of the Dome, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Karen Suter. Good evening, Karen.
Good evening, Shaun. Good evening, Steve.
And Lionheart is joining us. He says, good evening, boys. Well, Karen's here too, but the sentiment, of course, is still there. Thank you, Lionheart. We're glad you're back for another week. Really appreciate it because we've got a great episode. We're going to talk about our MLB Minute segment. We'll discuss the universal DH. I'm pretty sure that everywhere will have the DH, including Pluto, whether it's a planet or not, because the whole universe is getting the DH. As well, we're going to continue our look at 2022 projections. We're going to look at Tim Mayza and Trevor Richards, who we didn't have time for last week, and we're going to go round it out with Bulbashet, as well as our ever-popular fake news segments. And don't forget, folks, we would be so grateful if you could visit our ALS campaigns. The links you'll find at the sidebar of Jays from the Couch. There's our campaign, our fundraising campaign at support.alsevents.ca/Jays from the Couch, where you can make a tax-deductible donation to help fight ALS. If you are somebody who's into getting more than just a tax receipt for their money, you can go to our Redbubble shop, the Jays from the Couch Redbubble shop, where 100% of the profits will go to the ALS Society of Canada. It's a cause that is incredibly dear to me personally, I know, and to Steve as well, and a number of people all over the world. You can get yourself a nice mug like Karen's got there. We've got shirts and hats and signage and phone cases and anything. Just almost anything you can imagine is there. So we really would be grateful, and it would mean a lot to us if you would consider helping us out and fight this terrible, terrible disease. Yeah, so we've got our MLB Minute. We've established our rules. Each of us will get 1 minute to discuss a topic going on in the world of baseball, and it would be so easy to talk about the CBA talks, right? I mean, and at this point, everybody's ready to hurt somebody over this. Personally, I have a long list of where my fingers are pointing, and there are 30 of them. And I suppose 30 and 1 with the commissioner. Regardless, though, rather than do that, that's low-hanging fruit, and we're gonna dig a little deeper and go to the universal DH, which is super deep. But 1 minute for each of us to kind of discuss the topic, and this week it is the universal DH. So in order of appearance on the Jays from the Couch YouTube channel, Steve, we're going to start with you. Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern time. So you're up first. 1 minute to discuss the universal DH.
Well, as you can imagine, looking at my wrinkled old cracky face, I'm not a big fan of the DH. Never have been, going back to when it went to the AL in '73. So I always kind of held sacred it not being in the National League. I live in a National League city because I kind of like traditional baseball. It's here. That's fine. Something the Blue Jays fans have to realize about this, though, at least for the short term, for 1 year, it's going to severely limit the ability of the Blue Jays to add bench bats. You guys got Schwarber, Vogelbach, Corey Dickerson, Jock Peterson, Andrew McCutcheon, Nick Castellanos, Jorge Soler, Nelson Cruz, Chris Davis, Mitch Moreland. There's a lot more competition for these guys now, so the price is going to go up. So you might be all excited about the universal DH long term, but in the short term, it could have an impact on the Blue Jays' playoff chances.
Very interesting indeed. I never actually thought of that. It's fun. Oh, no, sorry. I was about to just respond like this is my show and I'm here by myself.
Well, it is your show.
It's the people's show.
No, Karen and I just have pictures that you don't want released, so that's why we get to come back every week. But it's your show, Shaun. It's your show.
Do whatever you want, Shaun. Yes. All right, Karen. 1 minute on the universal DH. Go.
Great. Yeah, no, honestly, I love the idea. I mean, I've been a diehard baseball fan since 1992, since the Blue Jays first got into and won the World Series. And I mean, I've always been an American League Baseball fan. I like the idea of the DH. Before, I would watch games that were held in National League parks where the pitchers had to hit, and I can appreciate the strategy behind it, where it's like if it's a close game and your pitcher's doing well, but you need some offense, having to decide, do you stick with the pitcher, do you pinch hit, and so forth. I can appreciate that, but overall for me, I will be very happy never having to see a pitcher that is not Shohei Ohtani hit ever again in my life. It's just kind of a waste. So I'm happy to be moving toward a higher skill level, and I think I just heard a bell. So that's
I haven't changed it. Yeah. It's a friendly bell still. So, all right. Oh, my turn. Sorry. All right, and go. I like Karen. I'm very happy to not watch pitchers try and hit, or even just stand there and waste an at bat. So that's one thing that I do appreciate. The game, I guess, will move a little quicker in that regard, but I think we are sacrificing some of that chess matching that's going on in baseball. And personally, I think if I really had a choice, I really don't care one way or another, but if I had to choose, I like the strategy of pitchers hitting. I also wonder, if you have a field of 9 players, should they all not be playing the game in all parts of the game? And if not, maybe the batting order should just be 8. Obviously I'm not suggesting that that's what they do, but it just seems to me that you have this one guy whose job it is just to hit, and there are people who have made excellent careers out of it, but it just seems a little odd when you get to start thinking about it over and over again. But the one thing that I also do like is that that's my time, is that it'll extend some careers too. I do like that. Edwin could have had, another 15 teams that he could have hit for, or anybody else, right? So that's the other side of that as well. Regardless, it's coming, and I realize as I'm sitting here talking and listening to Karen as well with that chess piece, the pitchers stepping in the batter's box, it's probably what I said, the slowing the game down or whatever. And Rob Manfred is interested in trying to get baseball games down to a neat 44 minutes, right? So that's probably what's behind that. Enough time for commercials, though, of course, right? I mean, you got to have commercials. Good old Rob. Anyway, so yeah, whatever it's going to be, I find it interesting because teams are now more and more, they're using the DH spot to kind of get versatility out of their entire lineup, right? To get guys days of rest and so on and so on and so on. And now here we are with the National League going to the DH. I can't help but wonder if those guys like Edwin Encarnacion, who are DHs, are going to get more jobs, are going to be able to play longer, or are teams just going to use this in a way where you can kind of spend less and use more players in that spot, if that makes any sense. Steve, do you understand what I'm saying here? Like the kind of creatively filling that spot as opposed to getting a Nelson Cruz, for example.
Well, we're talking about Nelson Cruz and Edwin Encarnacion, and careers are going to get extended. But then on the other aspect, careers are going to get extended. And do you really want to see some of those older hitters as opposed to the younger guys? Now, I could see the DH being utilized a lot more to get younger prospects regular at bats before they become regular. So it could be a strategical opportunity for managers from that standpoint. But I'm sorry, if you're going to speed up the game, DH is just one more hitter that's going to step out, adjust his batting glove 50 or 60 times, hutch up, spit on the ground, dig in, do his Vladdy loves whoever, little initials in the dirt. I just don't see it as a benefit. I think it was good to have two different setups, but I'm old. Yeah. So I get off my artificial turf.
Well done. I also think you're wrong. I think Vladdy's doing the New York Times crossword puzzle. So just a clarification there. And we've got a comment here. Nando390 says, my wife's boyfriend says, go Dodgers. I'm sorry, Nando.
Boyfriend.
I mean, cool. I guess if you're, if you're okay with that. I mean, I wouldn't be cheering on the Dodgers, but at least it's not the Yankees. Because, if it was the Yankees, you wouldn't be sticking around for your wife's boyfriend's opinion. Anyway. All right, let's get into some projections. Last week, we didn't have a time for Tim Mayza or Trevor Richards. So let's start with the Mayza-ing Tim Mayza. Had a great year last year, broke out lefty out of the pen. And I think before we even get into the actual specifics with numbers and stuff like that, very quickly, just a one-word answer from both of you. Steve, is Tim Mayza the go-to lefty out of that bullpen next season?
Absolutely.
That was not a yes or a no, but I think it counts. Karen, same question to you. Is he the go-to lefty?
Yes. They even have another lefty right now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Touche. By virtue of being the only lefty. Fair. You got me. I was hoping nobody would notice that. All right. So, yeah, I mean, he's clearly got the advantage for now. Let's take a look at his numbers. Projected to go 4-2 if win-loss records mean anything to you, with a 3.55 ERA. He's got, by looks of it, 55 strikeouts in 50 1/3 innings. And that's good for a 9.8 strikeouts per 9 innings. So based on that, I would suggest that it's another good season for Tim Mayza. Steve, I'm going to start with you. Where do you think those projections lie for him?
I think it's pretty much on point. At the risk of shameless self-promotion, I had an article today on jasonthecouch.com about is the bullpen is better than I had. Is it? Question mark, exclamation point. I don't know. Tim Mayza, I think it took him a little while to go up the food chain to get up to the majors, but once he was there, he showed he belonged. The numbers that I used in the article and that I always use when I'm looking at pitchers, especially bullpen pitchers, is fielding independent pitching, which basically takes out luck and takes out what the fielders are doing behind them and looks at things they actually can control, giving up homers, striking people out, walking or hitting batters. And his FIP is virtually dead on to his ERA. So I think that's telling you, okay, yeah, he controls for the most part what happens when he's out there, and you want that in a reliever. You want somebody you can send in there and feel pretty confident they are not going to let inherited runners score, or they're not going to walk, the universe to put more people on base and make it a little bit more interesting after a pitcher's pitched a great game, come up with those kind of situations like we saw last year. But I think Mayza is dead on. It is important to notice that they had him for 50 and a third innings pitched, but pitching in 61 games. So he is going to be the guy late in the game they're going to bring in mid-inning to get 1 or 2 outs against tough left-handers. Because as long as he's finishing out the inning, he doesn't have to go and pitch the 3 batters. So that's something also to take a look at. He's not a guy you're going to put out there and it's going to pitch an inning or 2. He's going to be in there for just a couple of batters at a time in order to get the job done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Karen, what are your thoughts on Tim Mayza and his projections? Do you think they're bang on, or do you think there's room for more from him?
Yeah, I like Tim Mayza, and I think those numbers are pretty good. I think that'll probably be pretty close to what we see from him in 2022, barring injury, knock on wood, of course. I mean, I can see an outcome where he might even be a little bit better than that. I guess the only thing I'm a little bit cautious about, and without even meaning to lead into it, I think a lot for Tim Mayza will depend on if they have any other left-handed pitcher whatsoever other than him that they can count on, like whether that's internally with Ryan Baroque or Taylor Saucedo, or whether they go out and acquire someone by free agency or trade or whatever. Because if Tim Mayza is the only lefty in the bullpen all year, then I could see him unfortunately getting overused and burned out, and I really hope that doesn't happen. So that's, I guess, my biggest concern there.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up as well. The overuse because he was so good last year. That is something that we should be watching for, given that he's expected to top 60 innings this coming season as opposed to 53 that he was in last season. So obviously, when you're successful, managers are going to use you more, and that makes sense. The other thing that stands out for me is the one thing that I love to look at when it comes to relievers is their left on base percentage. How many runners do they leave? And last season, Tim Mayza put up 70.8%, down from 71.2 in 2019. And of course, the 2020 season is a write-off. But what's interesting to me, though, is that next season they have him projected at around 74, 75%, right? So that number, they expect that to increase. For me, what's interesting for all of this is I never know how to predict bullpen arms, because from one year to the next, unless they are the elite of elite, you never know how a reliever is going to perform. And that's the one area where I think teams, well, up until maybe last year and this year, teams are starting to kind of hesitate to spend that kind of money. But now you have relievers going for $13, $14, $15 million a season. But again, those are the exceptions as opposed to the rules, right? And this is where I'm interested to see, as the offseason, whenever it gets to finish, if the Blue Jays are going to spend money on a hardcore reliever, or they're going to try and just add depth, and figure it out along the way, which, I know we all have opinions on, but Mayza for sure can be counted on, simply by virtue of, as we said, being the lefty and being so good last year. Now, the other bullpen arm that we were going to talk about this week, Trevor Richards, that is another interesting case because let's be real, when he and Adam Simber came over to the Blue Jays, things just turned around. Now, obviously, it's not those two guys, but it's not those two guys, right? So let's look at Trevor Richards here. 5-3 record, a 3.72 ERA. So a little bit higher than Mayza, but 3.72, 81 strikeouts, or 10.8 per 9 innings, over 67-ish innings. So once again, Steve, I'll start with you. Lots of strikeouts. Do you believe in the projections for Trevor Richards, Steve?
Absolutely. And again, I'm going to bring up the FIP again for this guy. His FIP is actually below what his ERA is. His FIP is estimated to be at 3.59. Trevor Richards just has a way of knowing when to throw any of the pitches he has in his arsenal at a particular time to get a batter to swing and miss. I was fortunate enough to watch him play in the independent leagues here in the Frontier League, and he was just a man among boys. He was just toying with them. The fact that they ever scored runs off him, I never understood how. And last year, he had the lowest whip among qualified pitchers, certainly in the bullpen, but on the team at all. It was 0.79. You just don't see that a lot outside of elite relievers. I think Richards has warmed up to and has adopted a bullpen role as a way for him to further his career. And I think he's just going to get better. I really think that Dave underestimated what Trevor Richards could actually produce out of the bullpen this year. And it might be because, again, he's in the AL East. He's playing those teams a lot more often than the other teams in other divisions. But I think he could really have a true breakout year.
Which is saying quite a bit because it's not like he was terrible last year, right? So, Karen, what are your thoughts on Trevor Richards and the projections that he comes with?
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of similar to Steve there. I like Trevor Richards. I mean, he along with Adam Simber, that they were such good in-season acquisitions, and I mean, at that point behind Romano and Mayza, the bullpen was such a dumpster fire, and I mean, at least having two more reliable arms helped them so much. But yeah, I like Trevor Richards. I don't think that those projections are going to prove to be unrealistically optimistic. I think if anything, they'll be pretty close to right on, or if anything, like you were saying, Steve, maybe he'll even end up doing better than that. Again, my 60 innings for a relief pitcher seems a tiny bit on the high side. So again, you don't want to burn these guys out. And I'm really hoping, because now you've got the four that were with the Blue Jays last year, being Romano, Mayza, Simber, and Richards, and they signed Yimi Garcia, who will hopefully be a useful arm for them out of the bullpen. And I really hope that they keep building, again, whether it's internally, externally, or a combination of both. I mean, even these minor league signings that they've done while the lockout has been on, maybe one of them will end up proving to be a useful major league piece there, because I don't want them to overuse and burn out the guys that are good to the point where later in the season they aren't good anymore. I remember a few years ago, Ryan Tepera and Danny Barnes, that they were just so good for the Jays, and Gibbons kept running them out there. And guess what? By the end of the season, later in the season, not so good anymore.
Yeah, funny how that works. For Trevor Richards, what I find interesting is that 2021 he had 64 innings, and now projected for fewer innings, except Zips. Their projections have him at 67. I don't know how you get 0.7 of an inning, but that's Zips. I don't know, man. Maybe they have some kind of new formula that only makes sense to them. But regardless, leave that aside. Don't get distracted, Doyle. I find it very interesting that he doesn't throw very hard, averaging around 92, 91, 92 with his fastball, but left nearly 80% of the runners on last season. So I think, and Steve, I think you were kind of getting at this, that he's kind of an unheralded piece of the Blue Jays bullpen. And I don't know for how much longer, because if he has another good season like that, man, it's going to be tough to stay unheralded for much longer. All right. Now, I wanted to get to a hitter. And this week I selected Bulbashet. I don't know if this is news or not, but I think I will announce here on episode 289 of the Jays from the Couch podcast, I have a man crush on Bulbashet. And I don't care who knows it. I'm probably not alone in that. But this guy can do everything. He might be playing at a position. I'm willing to concede that he may be a second baseman, or even a third baseman, maybe. But this guy is just, he does everything right. He's such a good, talented player, and he'll always be in the shadow of Vlad for as long as they're on the team anyway. But he's a star in his own way. He can beat you with just a regular old hit to the opposite field. He can steal a base. He can hit a home run. He goes up there and he makes things happen. And Bulbashet is quickly becoming one of my favorites. And I just went on a tirade, a love fest. All that to say, I chose Bulbashet this week to talk about his projections. And I'll just drop a few numbers at you here. Bulbashet is projected at 30 home runs, between 15 and 25 stolen bases, an 830 OPS, 125 weighted runs created plus, and anywhere between 4.3 and 5.2 wins above replacement. So, Steve, I'm going to start with you again. Bulbashet, are the projections on him light, right where they should be, or are they a little too friendly?
I don't have the man crush that you do on Bulbashet, but I think he is, this year, he is, his either improvement or regression will make or break the Toronto Blue Jays season. Not saying they won't be a playoff team, but how far they go, if he really does squeeze out every little bit of the talent that he has and leaves it on the field, sort of like Vladdy did last year, the Blue Jays could be serious World Series, contenders. I think he's going to steal at least 20 bases. I think 30 home runs is certainly doable. He's such an aggressive hitter. He changes the way a pitcher approaches him and actually the entire top of the lineup does that. They're all very aggressive. They're not afraid to swing on at the first pitch. But Bo takes it to a whole different level. So I mean, really, pitchers should almost like an intentional walk, just purposely throw the first pitch, for a ball. Just maybe throw Bo off of his thing because he's just so aggressive and he changes the way a pitcher will approach him. I think especially with relievers. Relievers are in a limited time frame. They like to get into a routine. They don't want this guy swinging at a pitch that's really in the dirt, but he's still going to drive it the opposite way in the gap. He is an absolute game changer, and while I think those numbers help the Blue Jays forget Marcus Semien to a great extent and his absence in the lineup this coming season, but I think potentially we're talking a Vladdy kind of year at a Bulbashet. If everything falls into place, a Vladdy type season would not surprise me.
No, and last year I said that, I made a bold prediction that Bulbashet would be MVP. And I obviously was way off. But
he got votes.
He did get votes.
Yeah.
But I think he's got an MVP season in him. And several All-Stars. But anyway, Karen, before we get to your thoughts on Bo Bichette. Lionheart has a confession here. Apparently, Lionheart's man crush is the King, Elvis. I assume it's Luciano. But
Unless he means or Elvis.
or Elvis Martinez, maybe.
Elvis Costello.
Right. I mean, I'm sure it can't be Luciano because we haven't seen him play that much. So, all right, Karen, Bo Bichette. Projections, are they fair?
Yeah, they're not bad. I think the OPS is a little bit low. Not sure where you get 830 from, other than the fact that as we've all kind of touched on, then he's not someone who takes a walk very often. He hits for a really good batting average. His walk rate, unfortunately, is a bit subpar. He's like the polar opposite of Kevin Biggio. I remember in 2019, it was mid-September, and having dinner with my husband and talking about how both Bichette and Biggio had almost identical on-base percentages, around 350, but they got there in completely different ways.
Yeah.
Bichette got there with a batting average. Biggio got there with an absolutely insane walk rate. But yeah, I think Bichette has got so much talent, and as good as he has been, and he earned his first All-Star berth this past season, I don't think we've seen the best that he can be yet. I can see him maybe not quite a Vlad Jr. season with the bat, but something pretty close to it. And I mean, his defense at shortstop improved. We were talking about it in the chat room the other day, how it was actually like, if you look at outs above average, how from May on, he was a lot better than he had been earlier in the season. I really think that's going to be something that we're going to see, that Marcus Semien will have had a lasting impression on Bo Bichette. And yeah, I can see him with the home runs, the improved defense, batting average, stolen bases. He's going to have a really good season.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll go so far as to say I think he has a Marcus Semien type season as opposed to a Vlad, because Vlad's just a monster at the plate, but Semien did it kind of quieter, but just a kind of a different hitter, and I would compare him more to Marcus Semien, but that's just me. One thing I do want to mention quickly before we go on to our fake news here, though, is that Bo Bichette is only 23, right? Vladdy, they're just so young. I know we're just talking about Bo here, but so think about Bo in really what was really his first full season last year. Think about that over the next 10, 12, 14 years.
With the Toronto Blue Jays.
With the Toronto Blue Jays, of course. We have a Hall of Fame player in the making right now. And we are on the early, we're like the early, we've got the early tickets, right, to the show. And that's special, man. Like, and I don't know how else to say it. I know I'm gushing a little bit, but that's like, you know, when you start to think about that, and then you got another one in Vlad, like, this is crazy how good this team actually is, and these two young men are. But we were talking about Bo Bichette. We'll talk about Vlad, I'm sure, at some point. So yeah, I think I believe his projections might be a little bit light. That OPS, as Karen mentioned, absolutely. I don't think 830 is not where he's going to be. 30 home runs, sure, but I think he steals 30 bases too. I think he's going to be a 30-30 guy, easy. I love everything about Bo Bichette. There, I've said it. Don't care who knows it. At least it's not Elvis.
I just want to add real quick. It should be noted that his defensive metrics went up once Kevin Biggio was hurt and not seeing as much regular time at third base. I think that makes a big difference for a shortstop, and it also shines a light on, hey, maybe we really do get, as much as we all love Santiago Espinal, we need to get an established solid glove third baseman between now and let's say the trade deadline to really tighten up that infield.
Right. And another way to say that too is it's, when Santiago Espinal took over at third base. That way we don't focus on how horrible Bulbashet was at third. And I got to say, like, he played way better than I would, because he was, I would just duck fetal position the whole time. So, I mean, at least he didn't do that. All right. We all know what time it is. Before we get to our fake news, I'm going to allow both of you the opportunity to plug your show for this week and let everybody know how they can follow you. Steve, starting with you, the On-Fec Circle.
Okay, now, assuming there is no deal struck before midnight tonight, I'm gonna talk about the long postponed discussion about Charlie Montoyo and this being a critical year in his career as far as being a manager in the Toronto Blue Jays dugout. Many people will tell you that this team is so good and he's the right guy to be there, so he could be Cito Gaston. Other people will tell you that strategically he could very well squander that talent and not get the most, like Jimmy Williams did in the late 80s after Bobby Cox left. So we're going to kick that around, and it is going to be fair and balanced. But if a deal is struck, three of us are going to reconvene at 6 o'clock tomorrow on the YouTube channel to talk about a new CBA.
Oh, absolutely. And if that's the case, it'll be like a 5-minute wee yay. That's all it'll be. It'll just be us cheering. All right, Karen, your turn. What's coming up on Sunday Side of the Dome, and how can people follow you?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Karen Sutar1, so just as the name is spelled there, and I'm actually on Twitter a lot, maybe a little too much, so love to chat about baseball. Mutual respect is always important, of course, and Sunny Side of the Dome. For this Thursday, again, I'm not quite sure. Sort of waiting for something to come to me. Inspiration will hit, hopefully, and have something to talk about that doesn't drive us all crazy with these darn labor talks. And
yeah, that right there is why I can't wait for this CBA thing to be dealt with, because it's just too long in between. Anyway. On that note, it is now time. Jays from the Couch proudly presents Fake Blue Jays News. Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Shaun. Now, an examination of the rosters of the 4 Blue Jays minor league affiliates exposes several unusual coach and staffing listings. Blue Jays pitchers Ryan Borucki, Trent Thornton, and Thomas Hatch are listed as roving pitching instructors for the Jays. Kasubi Kato as an infield instructor, Malik Smith as an outfield instructor, and Reese McGuire is the video instructor for the Dunedin Blue Jays. When Jays from the Couch reached out to Director of Minor League Operations Charlie Wilson for comment, asking the obvious question, don't these players have to be released or retired to serve as minor league staff? Wilson gave a simple one-sentence response. Oh, they will be. Some of you may know that former Major League infielder Casey Candell is the manager for the Jays AAA affiliate, the Buffalo Bisons. What you may not know is Candell's mother, Helen Callahan, and aunt, Marge Callahan, were star players in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League for over a decade. With that in mind, the Bison's manager shared that he is open to hiring multiple qualified women to fill out his future coaching staffs. I have always conceded my mom was a much better hitter than I ever was, joked Candell. And there are many women ball players who are qualified to not only play professional baseball, but to coach young players at the professional level. Candell admitted that based on the performances of some of the younger Blue Jays pitchers over the last couple of years at the majors and at AAA, it's safe to say that, quote, they kind of throw like girls. So why not hire a female pitcher or bullpen coach and develop them? Jays President Mark Shapiro and GM Ross Atkins could not be reached for comment. Back over to you, Shaun.
Steve, thank you very much. I love that Reese McGuire is handling the video. Whoops.
Yes, bad choice of words.
Hands where we can see them, Reese. All right. All right. The Blue Jays will be getting a new scoreboard as part of their renovations to Rogers Center. Of course, the reasoning for this is twofold. According to President Mark Shapiro, firstly, the Blue Jays are tired of the rather sloppy umpiring that they've been a part of. The hope is that the umpires will get a better view of plays with the enhanced screen. Secondly, the bigger board is for Charlie Montoyo. Apparently, on multiple occasions, Charlie mistook the inning. The numbers will now look bigger, so Charlie won't make the mistake of pulling a starter in the 5th, thinking it was the 8th. It's all part of getting better at all facets of the game, said Shapiro. In other news, to prepare for the upcoming end to the lockout, Blue Jays general manager Ross Atkins knows he'll be awfully busy. So he'll be given multiple cell phones and laptops to work as fast as he can. I asked him about it, and he said he's happy to have ownership's support, but his bill is skyrocketing. Ownership has told him that they need to make up for lost revenue due to the lockout somehow, and the longer the lockout goes on, the more phones he'll get. Oh, I love the fake news. All right. And before we head on out of here, we've got one more comment from Lionheart here. I hope the CBA does not include ads on the team jerseys. Thank you. I am not a fan of any logo being on any professional sports team other than the team itself. That's just my personal opinion. I agree with you, Lionheart. I'm not a fan of your choice of man crushes, but I am with you on the jerseys. All right. That's it. Thank you to Lionheart and Nando 390. I hope you've gone and settled this Dodgers wife's boyfriend issue thing. But, we're glad you took the time to join us this week. And maybe you'll come on back next week and let us know how that chat went. But to Karen and Steve, I want to thank you both for joining me, as always, for another week of Blue Jays Talk. I deeply appreciate the support that both of you have given both me and the show. So thank you both from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
For Karen, for Steve, for Lionheart, for poor Nando and his wife's boyfriend, this is Shaun Doyle, and you can follow me on Twitter at DoyleJFtC. Hoping life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle and you don't miss it. Take care.